Good morning. You know, it is important that we have organizations like Teen PAC, Leadership Institute, ISI, training young conservatives how to think. You would think that after going to, high school and college, that our kids would be prepared to lead, but they're really not. So when we have students in a simulated environment, like was described on a campus with with the student government, or being able to go out and to work on a real political campaign, it's really important to have those experiences. But as much as that activism is important, the actual thinking is important too, and teaching them conservative ideology. And it's not just the responsibility of a nonprofit organization. It really is part of our job as parents, isn't it, and grandparents, to be able to prepare our young people to think. But when we have organizations that come alongside our children and our young people, we're appreciative for that because it is a difficult world out there, and having two master's degrees that I've received late in life from the University of Georgia, and having sat in classrooms with 20-somethings, in this past decade, I can tell you there's great cynicism, on the part of young people on campuses. But as I often said, and as I hear Morton say, and I have been in this room every year since 1996. I'm not really training the other side. I'm training our side. So if the other side doesn't want to get activated and vote, that's fine with me. But one thing that I heard over and over again here as I brought young people into this is, to lead, you've got to win. Winning is really important, and you've probably worked for well-meaning candidates before. I mean, people that you went, well, it'd be great if this person would be elected. But nothing about the formula worked to get them elected, and so they became a sacrificial lamb. And then once you have a loss in that column, it's very difficult to go back and win. So it is important that before you get involved in running for office, or if you're influential in the life of someone that's thinking about running for office, which all of us should be, by the way. We all should be thinking about the future, and as we look at young people in this room, we need to be thinking, where do you live? What's your resume? And are you prepared to lead at some point in the future? In Georgia and in only a dozen states, they elect their public service commission. 38 states appoint them. And, truthfully, Jack Spencer from the Heritage Foundation is a whole lot more qualified to be a regulator than I am. Brian McConnell from NARUC here, the nuclear waste expert, is a whole lot more qualified than I am. And if I were governor of Georgia or any state, I would appoint one of them to be a regulator if I had that ability. But the way our Constitution is written in Georgia, we elect our public service commissioners, and that changes the entire dynamic. And it means that a person like me, who may not be the science and math guy, who is a Republican, very conservative, running for a regulatory position, really has to lean on smarter people. And the meat of my talk this morning about my ideas about nuclear waste and how we handle it, it's coming from Jack Spencer and his work at Heritage. And as a public service commissioner, I'm a member of NARUC, and Brian is the nuclear waste expert there. So I lean heavy on these people, and in fact, I haven't been in office that long, but I am discovering very quickly the importance of surrounding myself with smart people, with strategic people, with loyal people. It's very important. Well, let me just give us quickly, before I get into the meat of what I want to say, talk about how I won this election. Understand that I had never run for public office before. Now, everything I've ever run for, I have won. But the last time I ran for something was the Baptist Student Union presidency in 1981 at the University of Georgia. And before that, it was Student Council president in 1977. And before that, it was Student Council vice presidency in 1976. And before that, it was sophomore class president in 1975. And those people that talked me into running for sophomore class president, I thank them, because they did something in my life that was irreplaceable, and that was they helped me build confidence. And timing, when you're thinking about running for political office, timing is not everything, but it's a lot. And so a year ago, as I was advising a gubernatorial candidate in Georgia as a senior policy advisor, and this seat that I now hold came open, and I got a call from my good friend, Jim Beck, who's now the chief of staff for our insurance commissioner, and he said, "Tim, this is the seat you should run for. It's a statewide race. It's a 6-year term. There will be no TV involved, and you're probably not going to be running against any rock stars. You could win this thing." How do you take something like that? You say, "Thank you." And so Wendy, my wife, who knows how much I enjoy politics, said, "I agree. I think this is doable." So we paid the $3,400 qualifying fee and threw our hat in the ring and was running against 3 other Republicans, one sitting senator, state senator, one sitting state House member, and one former guy who was both a senator and a House member. And so we had a Republican primary, and then I was the leading vote getter there, to the shock and dismay of everyone in our state. I'm telling you, the establishment, let me tell you what an underdog I was. Of the 236 members in the Georgia General Assembly, 1 endorsed me. 1. But you know what? You know what I was counting on in this? Is that elected officials overestimate their popularity, don't they? They think they're a rock star. So, but they're not outside of their little kingdom. And these guys, I didn't want to tell them any different, and we snuck up on these guys as a result of the many young people that knocked on tens and thousands of doors across Georgia. And, you know, frankly, one little piece of campaign literature that I'll talk about. Technology, I learned a lot about here. I remember my very first visit here about the Sir Galahad theory of politics. I will win because I am right. That doesn't work. And even though my conservative friends, they would say to me, "Why are you running for this position?" You know, they're used to a guy, 7 kids, pro-life advocate, homeschool advocate, marriage advocate, and you're running to regulate the power company? How does that work? But you know what? My friends had small vision, unfortunately. Very small vision, because they didn't see the value of statewide platform. The fact that I'm a constitutional officer. The fact that I have access to all those other constitutional officers, including the governor. I have more influence than I have ever had in my life, even though the position is fairly unknown to the average person. But technology helped me get there. We produced, because we knew we had limited income. Part of it because I pledged not to take money from people I regulated, including power company employees, lawyers, or lobbyists. Well, you know, like some of my advisors said, "Well, who are you going to get any money from?" You've just eliminated anyone who has an interest in this race. I said, "I have friends you know not of. They're all around the country." I was telling Wayne, my good friend, my first contributor, Wayne Bond here, that my largest contributor, Rich DeVos, owner of the Orlando Magic, founder of Amway. knows me through CMP and through the network that TeamPack helped me build. But we produced a little postcard, a very simple postcard, no fancy brochures, no magnets, no calendars, no frills, one simple postcard that we produced that volunteers would send out on our behalf and place a stamp on. We provided the list to them. They wrote a personal, handwritten note, hand-addressed card with a first-class stamp. And tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of those cards went out. Please vote for my friend Tim Echols. He will keep our energy bills low. Very simple message. And that was our technology, but you know, there's no substitute for hard work and tireless effort. People want their money's worth. And people would say to me, "You're everywhere." Of course, I was tweeting, and you can look at my Twitter feed, which shows every place I've ever been and stays up there. You can see just how out there we were, and it was a very important part of our victory. And then something else I learned here, just about working with the press. And one of my masters is in journalism. And you just can't afford to make people mad who buy ink by the barrels. And everywhere I would go, I would build relationships with the media. And small towns, whether they were small town weekly newspapers or whether they were folks at the Atlanta Journal, and I would never take stories personally. I think I'm a little different than some conservatives on this, in that I really focus on building relationships with the media. In fact, I won't do radio over the phone. And we had this happen with a major station in Atlanta last week. I said, "Cheryl, I know this is more convenient. They want me to do on the phone. Tell them I only come in the studio. I only go in the studio." Why? One, I build a relationship with the host. In fact, one of the hosts of the morning show, I sent him a Reagan book. When I was there, I saw something on his wall. He liked Ronald Reagan, and I sent him a book. And let me tell you, when you befriend the media like that and you do things like that, they're nicer to you. And they have you back. Not to mention the fact when you're in the studio, you sound really good instead of being on the phone. So I have little rules like that I do that definitely help me. In fact, there was a little bit of a unusual article in the AJC Palm Sunday on front page of Metro section about me, basically saying this is the most unusual public service commissioner we've ever had. He has been in the media every other day since being elected. Every other day. It has been astounding, and I've been called some names by my fellow commissioners that aren't too nice regarding the way that I do media. But part of my stated goal, as you'll see in a minute, one of my top agenda items was increasing the stature of the commission. And part of that was selfish, but part of it was needed. And I got a little cover from the governor the other day. Governor saw me, said, "Hey, Tim, how's it going?" I said, "Well, it's going okay." Got a little flack from my colleagues. He said, no, he said, "People are finding out about the commission. You keep doing what you're doing. This is good," Governor Deal said. Precision messaging is so important. It's tempting to get off track, to comment on things. To me, there's probably nothing more important than staying on message. And one of my messages you're going to hear today, and that is about nuclear waste management. And I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to be talking about it for 6 years throughout my term, and I hope to have some impact on that. And this is something, Morton, that we just can't teach here, and that is we can't control providence. And there is no question that God moved me into this office. And I'll end today in a bit with a story just about how true that is. Well, let's talk about my agenda, and it is something that I'm regularly discussing in the media about what I'm trying to do, and part of that is increasing the stature of the commission, because the average person really doesn't know anything about it, yet the commission in Georgia is losing its budget and all the things, and I think part of it is because we're not relevant. And it's important, at least to me, to make the organizations more relevant. And so it's one of my top agenda items. The second thing is something that I've had to talk conservatives back off the ledge on in their feelings about me, is that, you know, I'm driving this natural gas car. One of my pledges in the campaign was we need to use more American resources. And if I get elected, I'm buying a natural gas car, and I'm going to commute to the Capitol in the natural gas car. What, I have all the green people over here and all the radicals over here? What's going on? So I bought a 1999 Honda Civic that runs exclusively on compressed natural gas. And as the article said the other day, he emblazoned his name across this car. I put my little logo, I have a little light bulb in my logo, pop my logo on there, I take it to parades, I drive it back and forth to the Capitol, paying, what am I paying now, $1.97 a gallon for my natural gas, 36 miles to the gallon. And my car is definitely the most famous car in Georgia. It gets a lot of media, not accidentally, but it's something that it has really worked well for me. I'm teaching Republicans about alternative energy. Nobody subsidized my car. I paid for my car. I'm paying for the fuel. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, we need to be using more American resources, not less. And I'm trying to lead the way in that as a Republican. It has confused the left. Now, if you want to confuse them a little bit more, I put solar thermal on my house. Now, what is this over here? The left doesn't know what to do with me. They can't. I mean, half of them aren't driving natural gas cars or hybrids or using solar. They're talking about it. But here's a Republican who actually has done both. And you know what? It gets me invites to places that I would never be able to go before, like solar lunches. I was at that December solar lunch, and I said, can I be honest with you all? I said, some of you are involved with radical social causes in our culture. And I'm going to tell you that you're hurting yourself with Republicans like me and others. You need to decouple yourself and your company from any radical causes. And I didn't tell them I didn't spell it out, but I wouldn't have that. I would not have that audience if I weren't driving that natural gas car and had that solar on my house. So it is part of my strategy in not only leading the way for my fellow Republicans, but also being able to take my message, and not just my ideological message, but my faith message. Because as we were talking at this solar luncheon, I also said, you know, I'm here because as an evangelical Christian, I believe that I should be a good steward of this world that God has given us dominion over. You know, I'm preaching, preaching to these guys. So it has been incredible to be able to take these things that the left cherishes and use it to be able to get in and have an audience. But this is my big thing. It's the privatizing of nuclear waste management. It's what Jack Spencer spends his time working on. He testified before the Blue Ribbon Commission. This, to me, should be one of the top 3 issues of our day. Why? Because this is a forgotten government promise. Do you realize the government promised to start picking up this waste, what was it, Jack, January 31st, 1998? They were supposed to start picking up the trash. You know how much of the trash they've picked up? They're not picking up that trash. That trash is sitting on our sites. We have 2 of them in Georgia. It's part of what compounded the problem in Japan. They did the same thing. Forgotten government promise. And then you hear the EPA coming in and want to give you new regs. New standards. Hey, let's just keep why don't you government, why don't you just keep the promises you made before, and then we'll talk about some more things that you want us to do. It is within my area of authority, and this is a temptation, I think, for us, and Morton, you've helped me with this through these years of sitting in this room, to make sure that I'm careful and that I stay within this area of authority. I'm in NARUC. NARUC has annual meetings. Brian's a part of that, and I intend to offer a resolution at the fall meeting about nuclear waste management. So I'm definitely within my area. A reporter came up to me. We had a Sunday sales alcohol issue that I had helped defeat some years ago, and a reporter says, "Hey, you going to that meeting?" No, I'm not doing that this year. They were wanting me to do it. They were wanting me, the press was wanting me to get engaged in something that, quote, I had no business involved in. But so we have to be careful. So in all of my enthusiasm to do things, I still have to be prudent in what I get involved with. This has lasting impact, this nuclear waste management issue, on people and our surroundings. I mean, when you're talking about something that could last 10,000 years, you know what, you better be careful. And so we need, and certainly the Japanese situation has just shown us, that we need to be so careful with this and put our brightest and best minds on this. And it's brought this issue to the front. In fact, I think it is threatening the nuclear renaissance that we're poised to have. And I said this during the campaign. The key issue message in my campaign was on a particular, the Southern companies building 2 new reactors in Georgia, and they talked the legislature into pre-charging people for this. All 3 of my opponents supported it. I came out against it, and in fact, I beat my opponents over the head with it, basically saying, what if we have some accident somewhere in the world that then will threaten our ability to build these reactors, and we've pre-charged people, and they've died or they've moved. So I was against this on its face, and then, of course, not knowing that we would have some accident in Japan. I thought maybe Russia, maybe Iran, but not Japan. So this is definitely threatening our renaissance. Here's the facts, is that we've got 62,000 tons of waste currently on the ground or in pools. This is waste the government should have been picking up. That's a lot of waste. As I mentioned, January 31st was the day, legal obligation, the federal government had been picking this up. We have 104 commercial reactors producing 2 additional tons of waste annually, which by the end of the century is going to require 9 Yucca Mountains to hold the amount of waste that we're generating. And here's one of the major problems with our system that Jack points out in his paper, in his research, is that the current system gives no incentive for a company like the Southern Company or other co-generators to do anything other than to let the waste sit. We need to change that system, because if we change it, the market will come up with creative things to do with the waste. And though France, is a socialist country, they have developed the technology to be able to do something other than to let it sit there. They get it off of their site in a year and a half. They reprocess that waste. They vitrify it and basically change the nature of it, turn it into glass. We aren't incentivizing our companies to do that. And our customers are paying twice. Do you realize that? Once to the nuclear waste fund, I think a penny per kilowatt hour into this government lot box. And then again, to have the waste sit there, guarded, monitored, we're paying twice. When's the last time you've heard a U.S. congressman even say anything about this? I can't remember. But it's going to take the U.S. Congress repealing this Nuclear Waste Act in order to be able to move forward with this. So the plan, Jack's plan, create a market-based system where nuclear power producer folds the cost for the waste management into the operating cost of the plant. Right? I mean, everything else is folded in there. The enriching of the uranium, the transporting of the uranium, which, by the way, is done by free market, private hands. The fabrication of the plant, our two new reactors in Georgia, $12 billion price tag. The operation of the plant in private hands. The only thing that's not in private hands is the waste management. And the government has promised to do it, and they have not, for whatever excuse they want to give, they have not come through on this. It's time to change the way we do it and allow these operators, under the with oversight from the NRC or the EPA or whoever needs to give oversight, but it's time to put it into the free market hands. Congress is going to need to repeal this penny per kilowatt flat fee that we've been assessed, that we continue to be assessed. This is not a tax per se, because the taxpayers aren't paying it. It's the ratepayers who are customers for those co-owners of those facilities. In Georgia, that's Georgia Power, who owns 46%, our EMCs, who own another share, and then some small municipalities that own the shares of that plant, at Plant Vogel. Then, as Jack talks about, all the money paid by ratepayers should appear as a credit in a newly created waste disposal fund once the current fee is repealed. So the $1.3 billion that Georgia ratepayers have paid into this appear as a credit against disposing the waste. So we don't lose what we've already paid. Companies operating the power plants can use the money to finance the geologic disposal of fuel held on site, or even to recycle the fuel if the economics work. I know Arriva, I went up to Charlotte and visited with them, the French company that's partially owned by the French government. Arriva is doing this in France. And for all the jokes we tell about the French, I got to give them this. We blinked at 3 Mile Island, and they didn't. They kept building nuclear power. And as a result, the R&D surrounding that, they continued, and they, in my opinion, are the best in the world. And they are putting in a proposal, according to these guys I met with a couple weeks ago, to do a $20 billion reprocessing fee in one of the quadrants in this country to begin to reprocess that particular quadrant's waste, which is about 15,000 tons per quadrant. And to me, that's exciting, that they would come over here and bring their expertise, and I hope that we're able to work that out. And then the plan includes some oversight by the NRC and the EPA. Jack's put a lot of thought into this plan, and I am putting it into op-eds. It will be in the Atlanta Business Chronicle on Friday. It's already appeared in 2 major Georgia papers, and I told Jack by the end of the year it will have appeared in every newspaper in Georgia. It is going to be one of my hallmark issues of my 6-year term, because it's so important. And I've met with our congressional Republican delegation about this and urged them to take action. But as you all know, to get inertia moving on a particular issue, it takes a lot. And I feel like this Japanese crisis, can definitely be the catalyst for moving us that way. Let me close with a couple of stories. When I was a college student, after having taken the LSAT, intending to go to law school, I met this young lady, Wendy, who was a freshman, and all of my plans changed. In fact, I said, you know what? I can make money doing anything. I don't want to go to law school. If I don't marry this girl, somebody's going to grab her. That was exactly my thought. It was a greedy motive on my part to want to lock that down. And so I did. I engaged her very quickly, married her, and we have 7 children to prove that. And it has been an incredible 30 years. But part of what we did together, being engaged, we set some goals. And I have my journal from 1982 sitting in my commission office, and I will show it to appropriate people who come to my office and appreciate this. But my top goal as a 21-year-old in 1982 was to realize statewide elected office. And for these 30 years, I waited, I prepared, not knowing when the right opportunity was going to come around for me to be able to do this. Frankly, I grew a little cynical myself, going, I don't see how it could ever happen. You know, you really gotta start small, and you need to be a city councilman or county commissioner and work your way up. And as I thought about the pecking order and the way it traditionally works, I thought, there's not enough time. I'll never be able to do this. And this really goes to just, to me, one of the most incredible aspects about the nature of God is his ability that when the right timing comes along and his servant moves out in faith, his ability to overcome obstacles and to move and manipulate circumstances in an incredible amount of time. So I went from being the president of a nonprofit ministry to helping a gubernatorial candidate to getting, who, by the way, wound up losing after I left his campaign, to getting elected to statewide office and having the greatest platform that I've ever had in my life. So I guess as we approach the National Day of Prayer tomorrow, it's fitting that we remember that the God of the universe is all-powerful, and that the training that we receive from the staff of organizations like the Leadership Institute and Team PAC and ISI and Heritage, that's important. But there is no substitute for divine intervention in your life. None. There is no substitute. In fact, you can do everything else right and miss that, and you lose. So, as we enter into this season of prayer over the next 48 hours, praying for our country, our military, our leaders, the heart of our own people, the nation's debt, financial crisis, our nuclear issues, tragedies around the world, just remember that this is not some ceremony. That as you pray, that you are communicating with the most powerful force, in existence, who has the ability to superintend your life in ways that no one else can. And I urge you to call upon him for assistance and aid and wisdom and blessing, because he is good to his word. Thank you very much for letting me come today. Thank you.